Welcome to The Power of Change, the podcast that delves into the intersection of leadership and technology in the finance world. I'm your host, Michael Praeger, the CEO and co-founder of AvidXchange. In each episode, I dive into the leadership topics and industry trends with business leaders, partners, and customers who embrace the power of change. Super excited today to have our guest in the studio. For this episode is Gabi Ruffels, LPGA player since 2019 and member of Team AvidXchange since earlier this year in January. Gabi's got a phenomenal background, and one of the best parts of the background is, and we're going to get into it more, during the discussion, but actually started out early in her career as a tennis player and then made the transition to golf. And super excited to see the accomplishments that she's had, as a pro golfer, kind of transitioning from her amateur status after winning the 2019 U.S. Amateur. And so that's a phenomenal, feat in itself. And then certainly seeing some terrific success on the ladies PGA Tour. So far, Gabi's played in 22 LPGA Tour events since 2019 and making the cut in 14 of them. And certainly seeing some great finishes, including most recently a top 6 finish in Scotland. So that's been awesome to watch. Her first professional win came 2023 Carlisle, Arizona Women's Golf Classic on the Epson Tour. And then Gabi, last year in 2023, became the first Australian ever to win the Epson Tour Player of the Year award. And certainly the catalyst for her springboarding to the LPGA Tour this season. So Gabi, super excited to have you here at AvidXchange here in Charlotte. So first of all, you're from the West Coast, came from went to college, a school that I'm familiar with. My son also is a Trojan from USC. You have an interesting background in terms of your parents, also two professional athletes. Maybe just tell us a little bit about kind of growing up and the sport you started in. At some point, you made that transition to golf. Tell us a little bit about that transition and kind of, how you got started in sports overall.
So I grew up in Southern California. I was born in Orlando, and then we moved over to California when I was 1 year old. My brother was 3, and both my parents were professional tennis players. So it was always sport for my brother and I, and especially tennis. So started my sporting career as a tennis player. Started when I was maybe 8 years old, and then played pretty competitively up until I was 14. So when I was 9 years old, my parents decided to move to Australia. They wanted my brother and I to experience another culture. And I'm so glad that we did. I love Australia. And I learned so much being there. And so I kept playing tennis while I was in Australia. And then, I was on the Australian national team for tennis, and we were traveling a bunch. And I decided to try and take my tennis to the next level and homeschool when I was 12 years old. So 12 until 14, I decided to homeschool just to help with travel and practicing more and stuff like that. So we thought it was going to be a good idea, but that kind of ultimately led me to lose the love I had for tennis. I kind of got burnt out. They were long days. Not much social interaction, I guess, for a 12, 14-year-old, which I feel like is so important at that stage of your life. And everything was tennis. And that kind of definitely drove me out of the sport. And so, I was so used to having an active lifestyle. And when I stopped playing tennis, my mom took me to the driving range for golf. And my brother was, playing at that time. And so apparently when I went to the driving range first off, I wanted to keep going back and back. And I really enjoyed it. And then she put me in the same golf club as my brother. And then from then on, I've just loved the sport. So that was kind of the transition.
So making that transition at the age of, 14 and you're 24 now, right? And so in 10 years, just phenomenal success you've seen. What was like, one of the highlights of your amateur career that you remember forever?
So I feel like my career has kind of been fast forwarded a little bit. I started when I was 14 and, went to college at USC when I was 17. So yeah, I just started playing amateur golf in Australia, played some tournaments, and then we still had a base in the US. So every summer I would come to the US and I'd play some summer amateur tournaments and try and get noticed by college coaches. So I did that for three summers in a row, I guess, and then was very fortunate to be picked up, like you said, by USC. And my mom went there, and it was always a dream school, whether I was playing tennis or golf. So when I got that offer, I definitely knew that I wanted to take it. And it was one of the top golf schools for women. And, they've always had a great program, and I knew that I wanted to go there. So I was super, super grateful for that. I think they kind of took a chance on me. I think I was ranked maybe like 800 in the world. So the head coach took a chance on me, and I was super, super excited to be there and try and learn from some of the top girls on that team and in college. And I'd say something from my amateur career that I always remember would be the US Amateur in 2019. Before that, I mean, if you were to ask me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I don't think I really would have said a professional golfer. And that win kind of propelled me to want to get the confidence to believe that maybe I could do this for a living. Yeah, so I guess that was kind of the turning point in my career that I realized maybe I could do this, and that's what I wanted to do.
Well, phenomenal. I mean, what's really interesting is kind of that progression from like 800th in the world, right? Going to college and then going through school and ending up winning the U.S. Amateur and in 2019, a short period later. So tremendous success. The next area, that I think I want to hit on, and we talked about this at AvidXchange and our teammates all the time, are mindsets,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the mindsets that you have to be the best you can be, whether you're a professional golfer
Mm-hmm.
or a teammate at AvidXchange, an engineer
Mm-hmm.
on the front lines of customer success or driving our sales team, whatever it be. What are the mindsets to allow you to be your best and be, growth minded in terms of always improving? Just think of the improvement from number 800 to number one, right? As an amateur. What was it about that allowed you to kind of make that transition from number 800 to be number one, and the mindsets that you kind of learned?
Obviously, I think, in business and life, whatever, a lot of it is hard work. And I
Yeah.
think that I definitely transferred that work ethic from tennis to golf. But I think, something was, adapting to a new sport. It was a whole different sport. And I think something that my dad has been really big about is being, open-minded and being inquisitive and surrounding myself with good people that would help me learn right from the very start. So, I had a really good team from the start. I needed to kind of learn the basics of golf. So my mom kind of got me into a golf academy that my brother was using, but a different coach to my brother, someone in Melbourne. So I had to kind of get the foundation of golf and really kind of know what I was doing. So, I started with them, but it's also just, practice day in, day out. And some of the best lessons I've learned, I think, are just, by myself out there on the golf course, and just a lot of practice and kind of having that growth mindset, like you said, just never being satisfied with being the same and always trying to see how you can get better and measuring, every tournament that I played and see how, if it wasn't good and how can I learn from that failure, I guess, and how can I keep going and try and get better.
So maybe just staying kind of with that theme a little bit, when you gonna, progress, through the weeks, do you create like, themes or objectives for yourself? Like this week in this tournament, I'm really going to work on XYZ part of my game. How do you think about evolving your game? Do you kind of think of it that way? Or how do you kind of maybe chunk up the different parts of your game to make progress?
I feel like it's a whole process, and I feel like having a good team around you is definitely a good place to start. So I have my caddy who is there with me literally almost every shot. So he definitely has an idea at the end of the week, what we did well, what I need to work on. And he, has a good relationship with my coach as well, because my coach isn't there all the time. He comes to some tournaments,
Right.
maybe like 20% of the time he's there, which is great when he's there, but he's not always there. So me and my coach, having that relationship to be able to kind of assess what I need to work on at the end of the week, and when I am home and I am seeing my coach, building a game plan around that. So a lot of it is just feedback. I feel like looking at stats, talking within each other and getting some good, honest feedback, and then doing real good intentional practice when I'm back.
I, always, challenge people around, in the professional environment related to coaching. And I'm like, why don't you need a coach just like an athlete needs a coach? Because you're trying to be the best you can be, right? And so you've talked about, kind of that team. Maybe expand a little bit about who is the team around you.
I've kind of added a few more people this year. On the LPGA, you have to have a caddy, whereas on Epson Tour, you didn't. So I added my caddy. His name is Patrick. He's from New Zealand. I started with him probably 3 months into the LPGA season. He's been great, such a calm, chill guy, great, nice person to have out on the golf course, someone who kind of, I guess, reflects my own personality and how I like to be out there. And then I have my coach, who I kind of started with at the start of the year as well. His name is Brett Lederer. He's out at Virginia Country Club, which is about 15 minutes away from where I live. And he works with a few other girls out there as well. And he's been great and travels, quite a lot out there. We have my management team. So I'm with Wasserman, and my manager is Chris Mohop. So started with him when, I first started as a pro. I would say my trainer from back home, so Golf Australia is also a sponsor of mine, and I'm part of the rookie squad, and I go through a lot of things with them on a daily basis. My physio, I have a physio out there. Can't forget all these people. He works with a few girls on the LPGA, and then I'd say my parents. So another person on my team is AvidXchange, who I started with this year, and I'm so grateful to have been able to sign with them at the start of the year, and they took a chance on me as a rookie, and I thank you for that. So thank you for that opportunity, and they've been great, and I'm so excited that I get to be here this week in Charlotte in the headquarters of AvidXchange. So I'm super grateful for the partnership, and hopefully it continues in the future, and super grateful to you and your company.
And we're excited to have Gabi as one of our sponsored golfers, and I think we're going to see great things out of her, not only the weeks throughout this year, but in the years to come. So the short period of time you've been on the LPGA tour, what are some highlights that you've just had over the last couple of years?
Yeah, no, it's been fun. It's been kind of a whirlwind, like what I said. But yeah, so I turned pro in 2021. I spent 2 years on the Epson Tour, which is kind of the developmental tour to the LPGA Tour. And starting on that tour, I feel like I would recommend it for so many girls starting out, because it really gives you a taste of professional golf, but just kind of not as on, as big a scale as the LPGA. The competition is still great. These are some of the best golfers in the world, but it's still kind of a step down from the LPGA. And so started, 2 years on there and had a great experience. And once I got my LPGA card last year, it taught me some great lessons on the Epson Tour, and, being able to win 3 times, it taught me, the priceless lesson of, how to be able to win and how to manage yourself on the road. And getting to the LPGA Tour this year as my first year and having those 2 years on the Epson Tour really, really helped me.
One of the things that, has been, true to both, AvidXchange's success and, my success as a leader have been around routines, and whether, it's a, daily, weekly, kind of quarterly routine for our business. In fact, one of the ones that we're going to experience today is one of those routines, which is our town hall meeting. And it's kind of the event that I use to, how do you create, communication and alignment across 1,700 team members in terms of what are the objectives they're working on? How did we do last quarter? What are some of the big objectives that we have? And to kind of create that alignment across strategies. And then, that boils down to, monthly, weekly, daily routines for our team, and I have my own kind of personal kind of routines that I do, including, my push-up routine every morning when I get out of bed, all the way to, I have an annual kind of objective of learning something new every year, and try to build a new muscle around curiosity, right? What are some of your routines, whether it be kind of a daily routine, or how do you, just function as a professional athlete to, getting ready for a tournament?
Right. I mean, I wish it was more of a set routine. I feel like as a professional athlete, especially as a professional golfer, you're traveling so much, and sometimes you can't have the same set routine every day, I guess. So it definitely have to be flexible and adaptable. But it differs when I'm at home versus when I'm at a tournament, but let's start with when I'm at home. I like to be intentional with what I do every day. And I definitely like to kind of write out in a journal at the start of the day what I want to achieve in that day. And then kind of come back to it at the end of the day to kind of see how I did, whether it's with a drill or whether it's with my swing or, what I shot on the golf course that day or some stats that I got. And I like to just write it down. And if I learned anything, write that down as well, just to make sure that I'm, using every day to its fullest, I guess, and being intentional with that. And hopefully, to me, that's been a good way to try and improve. I like to try and work on kind of each part of the game every day. And in golf, if you're a golfer, you know that there's a lot of different facets to the game, from putting to swing to pitching to chipping. There's a lot to work on. So kind of breaking that all down. And I like to try and do a little bit of that every day. And then I also like to work out. So normally, I'm a morning person, so I like to try and get my workout in the morning. And I kind of go through my trainer and my physio to see what workout I'm doing for that specific day. So yeah, when I'm at home, I try to work on all facets of the golf game and then try and get in a workout. But sometimes I'd be superhuman if I did that all the time. So it's not always perfect, but I try and do that. And then when I'm at a tournament, that's when you kind of have to be flexible, because sometimes, you don't have control over certain times there's a pro-am and you can't play or something like that. So that has to be flexible. But when I'm at a tournament, it's more about just getting to know the golf course. So I play a lot more, whereas I do more practice at home. And then my physio travels with me on the road as well. So try and get some treatment in or a gym session. So a lot of golf and some gym as well.
Good deal. So let's talk a little bit about, I'll call it game day. It's a day of a tournament and you're getting ready. What tools do you use to visualize how the day is going to unfold, how, each hole is going to unfold? And do you use visualization to, kind of think about and actually imagine, where you're going to be, what kind of lies you're going to have, all those type of things. Maybe talk a little bit about the mental aspect of what you go through tournament day.
For sure. I mean, a lot of people say that golf is 90% mental, and I would definitely agree. Recently, I've actually started, my dad has been trying to get me to do a lot more visualization, and it has really helped, especially when you're nervous. I feel like visualizing a good outcome is really something that has really, really helped me. And so kind of going through the golf round and kind of visualizing yourself going through good shots, going through challenges and seeing how you respond to that and visualizing kind of a good response to that and good outcomes has really helped me and has made me, get on the first tee and be really confident. So that's something that I've kind of added recently, but I guess more in the past, I've been big with meditation. I definitely enjoy doing meditation, especially on tournament days. I feel like, just getting that 10 minutes of just kind of calming has really, helped with centering me and just making me calm and able to withstand all the different challenges throughout the day.
Yeah, no, there's some, great stuff, that's been, kind of talked about, whether it's Michael Jordan's, visualizing, all the shots he was going to take during the course of a game, to some of the US, downhill skiers in visualizing kind of, how their kind of routine was going to play out. And so, a lot of power in that. Like anything in life wins, but it's probably highlighted because you have a score every time you play, and it's very visual to lots of people, is, handling adversity. I'm sure, in every round doesn't, play out in a perfect way, right? What are some of the tools that you use and how you handle adversity for yourself?
It kind of goes back to that meditation as well and trying to be as calm as possible. I think having a balanced mindset and being level-headed, that's some of the best advice I've ever gotten to try and deal with adversity, because I feel like the more level-headed you are, the more you're able to see things clearly, and the better you're able to react to those situations and hopefully get a better outcome of those situations. But I feel like it's also not being scared of adversity, and even if you do fail, knowing that you can learn from that failure. And I feel like having a good attitude and being level-headed, that has allowed me to be able to learn from those challenging times and those, adverse situations. I guess not being scared of it, but welcoming it. And, if you succeed in those, in adversity, then great. But if you don't, it's also, being open-minded to learn from that situation.
Are you the most nervous, before you, go to tee number one, or, as you're kind of coming up the whole 18?
Great question. They're probably the same nerves, depending on the situation, but always first tee, I'm nervous. It's the start of the round, you kind of are getting your round going and the anticipation, especially first tee, like the first round of the tournament, because, you want to do well, and that kind of sets the tone for the rest of the day and the rest of the tournament. So first tee, always a bit of nerves, but it's not bad nerves. It's exciting. I enjoy playing golf, and I enjoy getting the round going. I love competing. So, but 18, I mean, if you're having a good round, then you kind of start getting nervous, maybe around like 15, 16, because you might be thinking about your score a little bit and wanting to kind of get into the clubhouse with a good score and finish strong. But if you're not playing well, maybe the nerves kind of ease a little bit. But I always find that nerves are good because it means you're doing something and you're having a good day. So like I said, if I wasn't nervous, then it means that, I'm not really having a great day. So nerves are good.
Excellent. It was funny. I heard, Brett Favre, the famous, quarterback, talk about nerves. And he said, his entire pro career, he was so nervous. He felt like he was going to throw up before every game, and he knew it was time to retire when he stopped having that feeling.
Right.
And so, like you said, nerves are good, and it kind of gets you kind of excited as well in terms of, just getting, a mental framework to, tackle, that day, that course.
Yes.
What are some, if you say, hey, if I want, to move into, a top 10 LPGA Tour player for, a long period of time, what are some of the objectives you have for your game in terms of what has to get better? What about your overall, game do you say, I'm trying to get better at?
Like I mentioned before, working on all facets of the game every day. I would say just kind of continually trying to improve every aspect. Ball striking this year, I've kind of placed an emphasis on that with my coach, adding Brett this year, and that's definitely improved. I'd say looking at stats, what needs to improve to become the best in the world would be short game, specifically maybe like 100 yards and in. I mean, if you talk to a lot of
You're
pros,
kind of in
they'll
between,
say,
clubs and
yes, yeah. If you talk to a lot of pros, they'd say kind of the difference maker would be the short game. And, spending a lot of time on my swing this year, I feel like, I need to spend a bit more time on my short game and putting. And I feel like some of my best weeks are when I'm putting really well. And obviously that, that can vary depending on the type of grass and, if you're feeling good that week. But I'd like to make that more consistent overall, especially next year. So I feel like I'm going on a good path, just kind of continually trying to improve every aspect. And hopefully I can do that for the end of the year and keep going through the rest of my career.
Excellent. Well, hey, I think, in terms of wrapping up, the last, question I always like to ask is for anyone that's had any kind of success, whether it be an athlete or professionally, I always find that there's certain kind of leaders or mentors that they've had, throughout their life. Who've been some of those people that have been, whether, super impactful or been a great mentor for you?
For sure. I'd say, throughout my whole life, I know I mentioned my dad a little bit, but I'd kind of go back to him. So he was a professional tennis player. Actually, both my parents, I can include in this. Both of them were professional tennis players. My dad was top 10 in the world. And then after his tennis career, he was a coach. So he coached, quite a number of good players. And I feel like personality-wise, I'm very similar to him. And, I pick his brain a lot for certain things, as I feel like the two sports and, sports in general, I feel like the mental side correlates between the different sports. So I like to go to him for a lot of different mental things, and he's so wise. And I really, really trust his advice. So, ever since I've been a little girl, tennis or golf, I've kind of gone to him. And yeah, I think just, trusting my team. My team has changed, but being able to have that trust to go to them with certain things and to be able to talk it through with them has been really beneficial. So I'd say mentors would be the people on my team who I trust and who I, confide in and who are able to make me better.
Closing this episode, terrific guest that we had here, Gabi Ruffels. Just a couple takeaways that I had, as part of our discussion, whether you're a pro golfer or a teammate at AvidXchange, the importance of mindsets. Gabi talked about the importance of a growth mindset, being curious, trying new things, and how do you progress and continuously get better. The second thing that I took away is, the team aspect of it. It's just like I, tell our team at AvidXchange, pretty much, all of your, even personal success relates to there's a team around you, a team that you have to collaborate with and work with. And I think Gabi shared some great examples of the team that she has around her, including Team AvidXchange, and certainly be able to go back to your roots and have mentorship and coaching as you progress. Again, whether you're a pro athlete or a teammate at AvidXchange, super important to do. And so some great takeaways from today's episode. Thanks for listening to The Power of Change, presented by AvidXchange. If you like what you've heard, subscribe to our channel and leave a 5-star review. While you're waiting for the next episode, head on over to avidexchange.com for our latest research reports and business insights. And if you're interested in learning more about accounts payable automation from AvidXchange, click the link in our show notes to connect with our experts. Thanks again for listening to The Power of Change. We'll see you next time.